Hey everyone, Jenn and Adam here with PepperHarrow Farm, and today we're going to give you guys a quick tour of our seed starting areas and how we start seeds here early in the season.
We start our seeds very early season, usually late December, beginning of January. The first thing we usually start with are dahlia cuttings and cuttings from scented geranium. Those are the two things we start off early December. Some of our dahlias we actually pot up and never let them go dormant. Some of them we let them go dormant and then we wake them up later. It just depends. But this growing thing, we basically have a growing operation where we have something growing probably all year round, so we never really do get a huge break. So our dahlias are going, and then we usually start some lisianthus too in very early January. As most of you know, lisianthus grows really incredibly slow, so it's one we like to get started as soon as possible. It takes a long time to get mature enough to be able to plant it out in the field. And some of you might be asking, why do you start seeds inside of your home? For us, it's very easy to be able to walk downstairs. It's a cost-effective method. It's also very productive for us just to be able to walk downstairs and keep an eye on everything.
It saves us money from starting the heaters in the greenhouse or our little propagation house too early. It's very expensive, so we're able to shorten that window that we need to run heat in the propagation house, and we don't necessarily need all that space. Starting down in our basement is a great alternative. And like Jen said, yeah, it's nice to just be able to walk downstairs rather than trudging through the snow to the propagation house.
Exactly, and water is always a concern too, as most of you know. When it's winter like this out, it's hard to be able to get water to the greenhouses and things like that because the hoses are all frozen. So starting seeds indoors and then transitioning them outside is the way to go. So that way you don't have to lug water back and forth and all that good stuff. So this is our little seed starting room. I hope you guys find it very useful for us to show you our little room.
Now, like we've said in other videos, we like to keep things as simple as possible. We are always looking on how we can make things easier on ourselves. So you'll find that our setup down here is fairly simple. And I think the first thing we'll talk about is our lighting. Quite often people ask, what type of lighting do I need to start seeds? It's not complicated at all. You can see that we just use simple shop lights. These are our first lights that we've invested in. We are slowly starting to migrate as we switch lights out to LED because it's more economical. But these T5 shop lights work. These are what you would find in a warehouse or a shop, and they work fine. Seeds just need light, any kind of light to germinate, not necessarily a specific spectrum. So our seeds are in here such a limited amount of time before they get transitioned out to the propagation house that it doesn't really matter what type of light that they're growing in. We grow nice healthy seedlings down here under these light conditions. The
type of seedlings that we're growing right now early season are seedlings that can take a little bit of cold. So most of you have known cool flowers. These are cool flowers that can take a little bit of cold. So ultimately, we're going to start our seeds down here, and you can see that we have some dianthus started. Dianthus is a perfect example of a cold flower. Right now, they're a little too fragile to transition out to our propagation house. We will wait until the first 4 sets of leaves form and they're a little tougher before we transition them out to the heated prop house.
Now, you'll notice that in here, we just have simple racks. We got these from
Lowe's?
Lowe's or Home Depot. This is not sponsored by Lowe's or Home Depot, but this is where we got these racks from. We shop around with whoever is having their sale. We shop the sales from the hardware stores.
Yeah.
But we just use these simple stainless steel metal racks. They work great. They let light penetrate through, so the lights that we have up above are able to get down lower. We do have some light strips on some of the lower racks. These racks work great, simple, easy to put together, light enough that we can move them. We transition some of these outside once the weather gets warm enough, so we have some rack space outside. Can actually fit a tremendous amount of plants on these racks.
The trays we use, we've just started out this way and we haven't switched it up since we started. We use 72 cell trays, and it's worked really well for us.
We like the 72 trays because we have it mathed out how many trays we need per row, so we know that we need 11 trays for a 50-foot row at 9-inch spacing. That's another video that we'll go over.
Yeah, Adam gets mad at me because I like to do, 3 trays or 4 trays. He's like, it's not 11 trays. But it's nice to see a full row of something, not having, your hodgepodge rows put together with just a few things in
unless
each one.
Unless it's something small and special that we might only have, something that we're trying out for the first time. We still try out new varieties that we might just do 1, 2, or 3 trays of. Right?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. So there are some things that I do half rows of or a smaller row of. Specifically, I think about like wedding work and doing some of those extra sparkly things that we don't want to produce for market bouquets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have an interesting filler that I like to just plant a little bit of just for the wedding aspect.
There are several different online sources to buy 72 trays at. We shop around as well and look for the best deal online. If you Google 72 tray, it'll pull it up and it'll show you all sorts of options. Yep. So pretty easy to find online. So you might also notice down here that we have these yellow sticky traps. Growing indoors, I guess one of the biggest things that people will fight, and you might see it in houseplants too, are fungus gnats. So that is the biggest problem that we have here, are fungus gnats, not really much else. So these yellow sticky traps are a good control for that.
Doming and bottom watering. I am not a huge advocate of doming a lot of the seedlings that we start. It will help. The more humid your space is, the more it will create germination for your seedlings. So remember that. People have asked us like, oh, do you run a dehumidifier because it's down in your basement? Absolutely not. You actually want it to be pretty humid in here. We try to keep the space closed off to the rest of the house, but we definitely want it to be humid in here. The only thing I really dome are Lisianthus. And for Lisianthus, it's incredibly important that it's high humidity. That's what I found is like the key to germination with Lisianthus. It has to be incredibly high humidity. I also bottom water Lisianthus and I bottom water eucalyptus. So I try not to do a lot of bottom watering, but Lisianthus and eucalyptus are 2 that I definitely do that with.
Now Lisianthus seeds are, if you've seen them before, they're infinitesimally, is that a word? They're just unbelievably tiny, so that's why we recommend bottom watering your Lizzies. People have a lot of trouble getting Lizzies to grow from seed, and the big secret, like Jen said, is doming, bottom watering, and bottom heat.
We do have a few heat mats, but we use them sparingly. It's not something that we consistently use in our growing process. With the cuttings that we have here, it will make them root a little bit quicker. But for us, it's just a time thing, and I'm like, one less thing that I have to check and make sure everything's going okay on.
Now, like Jen mentioned, we don't use heat mats even though we have a few. One of the reasons is just it's kind of time consuming to move them around and keep track of it. But on some of our racks, we have lights on the lower levels, and those actually generate heat up towards the other plants. So it makes it kind of unnecessary for us to use heat mats, and kind of a double whammy with the lights and providing heat up above. Now we'll take you all outside and show you our outside propagation house. This is a 12 by 20 house. We have outgrown it a few years ago, and we stretch things for as long as we can, and we about reached the limits with this one. So
it's called bootstrapping, folks. Bootstrapping.
So we are actually going to bite the bullet and make the investment this year in a bigger propagation house. And you'll see that this one has worked well for us for many years. It has this nice heater inside that keeps it nice and toasty and warm. And you'll see that the racks that I built are just pallets and 2x4s that I kind of cobbled together that work phenomenally. And there's a couple of different layers, so we can actually grow stuff on lower levels and germinate on the lower levels of these racks as well.
Growing out here in our heated prop house, we have a bunch of our dahlia tubers. And the dahlia tubers are out here because we have them woken up, we have them sprouted and ready to go to take dahlia cuttings off of them. We have a follow-up video of this showing you how we do dahlia propagation and how we grow our dahlia stock.
Once the weather starts to warm up a bit, we can start to transition things from this propagation house out to our unheated hoops. So you'll see this hoop right here is kind of the same kind of design as our Propagation House, but it's unheated. But it generates a lot of heat, and if we need to protect things in the winter, we have wires in here that we can double cover. So it's covered by the hoop, and we can cover it on the racks as well. That protect it on just the extra little bit of chilly nights that we have. Once we start to get into March a little bit, we still will have the odd cold snap, but the weather starts to improve a little bit, that we're able to start to transition things out into our unheated house.
And for those things that are ready to go directly into the ground, such as ranunculus, anemone, snapdragons, dianthus, we'll put them directly into our greenhouse in the back that we recently just got covered, but it's ready to go, and we're ready to plant those things at that point.
I just covered this greenhouse last week with a couple of friends of mine, and it's dynamite that it happened, because we really need the space. We're getting real close to wanting to transition some things into the ground, and we plant in ground in this big hoop that we have, or this big greenhouse that we have here.
We hope y'all enjoyed the tour of our seed starting areas and feel motivated to start growing some things on your own.
If you guys liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.